You wake up at 6:47 a.m. This isn't your natural wake-up time, but your phone vibrated 3 times in succession with notifications that the algorithm calculated were urgent enough to interrupt your sleep. You get up, still drowsy, and without even realizing it, you're already scrolling through your Instagram feed. It's 7:02 a.m., and you've already seen 17 posts that the algorithm specifically chose to capture your attention for the next 20 minutes. You don't know it, but every second of your gaze is being measured, every pause is being recorded, every microfacial expression is being analyzed by your phone's front camera. At 7:23 a.m., you finally get up to have coffee. You open the delivery app, and magically, the first restaurant that appears is exactly what you were craving, even though you hadn't searched for anything. How did they know? At 8:15 a.m., on your way to work, you receive a podcast notification that seems perfect for your current mood. At 10:30 a.m., a news story appears in your feed that confirms exactly what you already thought about a political issue. In the afternoon, you get an ad for a product you'd been considering buying for weeks, but never searched for online. At the end of the day, you feel like you made dozens of free and autonomous choices. You chose what to eat, what to listen to, what to believe, what to buy. But here's the terrifying truth that few are willing to face. You didn't choose absolutely anything. Each of these decisions was carefully orchestrated by algorithmic systems that know you better than you know yourself. They knew you would wake up drowsy and vulnerable to first impressions. They knew exactly what type of content would exploit your emotional insecurities. They knew your resistance to consumption impulses would be low between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. They knew you would seek validation of your political beliefs after a stressful day at work. You believe you're living your life, but you're actually following a script written by machines that were programmed by people you'll never meet, working for companies whose true objectives you'll never fully understand. And the most frightening part is that this control doesn't happen through force, coercion, or obvious manipulation. It happens through the perfect illusion that you're always in command, always choosing, always exercising your individual autonomy. To understand how we reach this point of total algorithmic control, we need to go back in time and examine how power has always functioned in human history. For millennia, anyone who wanted to control populations had to use direct and visible methods. The pharaoh built monumental pyramids to demonstrate his divine power. The Roman emperor organized grand spectacles in the Colosseum to keep the masses distracted and submissive. Medieval kings erected imposing castles on hills so everyone would know who ruled the region. Control was physical, architectural, ritualistic. Even when societies became more complex, power mechanisms remained fundamentally visible. The Catholic Church controlled minds through Sunday sermons, confessionals, and elaborate ceremonies. Modern states developed educational systems to shape citizens, created mass media to influence opinions, and established bureaucracies to regulate behavior. You always knew where the power was. There was a pope in the Vatican, a president in the palace, a principal at school, an editor at the newspaper. Power had a face, an address, a clear hierarchy. But more importantly, you knew when you were being influenced. When the priest spoke from the pulpit, you understood you were receiving religious indoctrination. When you watched the evening news, you knew you were consuming a filtered version of events. When you saw an advertisement on TV, you immediately recognized that someone was trying to sell you something. There was a clear distinction between moments of external influence and moments of personal autonomy. This clarity allowed for conscious resistance. You could choose not to go to mass, change the channel, question what was being said. The digital revolution didn't just change the methods of control, it fundamentally redefined the nature of power itself. For the first time in human history, power became completely invisible, continuous, and apparently voluntary. Algorithms didn't replace the old methods of control. They made them obsolete by creating something much more efficient. A system that makes you want exactly what the system needs you to want. Consider how this works in practice. When you open any app on your phone, you're not simply accessing a neutral tool, you're entering a carefully designed environment where every pixel, every color, every transition has been optimized through thousands of psychological experiments to maximize your engagement. The developers aren't trying to create the best experience for you. They're trying to create the most addictive experience possible, one that will keep you in the app for the longest time possible. But the real power of algorithms isn't in their ability to capture your attention, it's in their ability to shape your fundamental desires. Through the analysis of billions of data points about your behavior, artificial intelligence systems can identify psychological patterns that you yourself don't know about. They know you become more impulsive when you're stressed. They know your self-esteem drops on Mondays. They know you're more susceptible to certain types of emotional appeals depending on your menstrual cycle, the weather, or even how many steps you took that day. With this information, algorithms don't just predict your behavior, they actively modify it. If the data indicates you're going through a period of low self-esteem, the algorithm might start showing you more content about personal transformation and beauty products. If it detects signs of social anxiety, it might direct content about relationships and dating apps. If it identifies tendencies toward compulsive behaviors, it might intensify exposure to special offers and limited time promotions. The most disturbing part is that this process happens below the threshold of consciousness. You never notice that you're being directed. The subjective feeling is always one of spontaneous discovery, happy coincidence, finding exactly what I was looking for. The algorithm meticulously preserves the illusion of autonomy while guiding you through a maze of predetermined choices. I need to pause for a moment to ask you directly, when was the last time you felt you were truly in control of your digital decisions? When did you last notice you were being influenced without realizing it? I know we often keep these concerns to ourselves, perhaps for fear of seeming paranoid in a world that celebrates technology as liberation. But your suspicions are valid and shared by more people than you imagine. Share in the comments. I feel I lose autonomy when I use my phone to. Your reflection can help others recognize similar patterns in their own lives and begin an honest conversation about how to reclaim our individual sovereignty. This transformation in the exercise of power has consequences that go far beyond digital consumerism, we're witnessing the emergence of a new ruling class that doesn't need armies, police, or traditional bureaucracies to exercise social control. The new masters of the world are software engineers working in corporate complexes in Silicon Valley, mathematicians creating predictive models in secret laboratories, and executives making decisions in boardrooms that will affect the behavior of billions of people without them ever knowing such decisions were made. These new power holders have discovered something no dictator in history managed to achieve: how to make people enthusiastically collaborate in their own subordination. There's no need to threaten, censure, or repress. You just need to create an environment where people naturally make the choices that benefit the system. It's like having a prison where the prisoners not only don't want to escape, but actively defend the virtues of remaining incarcerated. Algorithmic control is also redefining the nature of democracy and public discourse. Traditionally, democracy depended on the existence of a shared public space where different perspectives could compete for citizens' support. Newspapers, radio, and television, however imperfect, created a basic set of shared facts from which political debate could happen. Algorithms have completely fragmented this shared reality. Now, each person lives in a customized informational bubble where they only receive information that confirms their pre-existing beliefs. If you believe in conspiracy theories, the algorithm will feed that belief with more conspiracy theories. If you have political prejudices, you'll receive evidence that seems to confirm those prejudices. If you have anxieties about the future, you'll be bombarded with content that amplifies those anxieties. The result isn't just political polarization, it's the death of the very possibility of rational debate based on evidence. How can you have a productive discussion with someone who is literally living in a different reality from yours, algorithmically constructed to be as convincing as possible? How can you find collective solutions to social problems when you can't even agree on what the basic facts are? But perhaps the deepest dimension of this algorithmic revolution is how it's transforming our fundamental understanding of free will and human identity. For centuries, Western philosophy was based on the premise that human beings are rational agents capable of making autonomous choices based on conscious reflection. This belief grounded not only our political and legal systems, but our very notion of human dignity. Algorithms are demonstrating that this premise might be fundamentally false. If a computer system can predict and manipulate your choices with statistical accuracy superior to your own self-awareness, what does that say about your supposed autonomy? If your most intimate desires can be shaped by programming codes, what remains of your individual identity? We're discovering that the human mind might be much more mechanical and predictable than our self-esteem would like to admit. Algorithms reveal that much of what we consider personality, preferences, and conscious decisions are actually behavioral patterns as regular as planetary movements. Once you identify the patterns, you can predict and influence behavior with an efficiency that makes traditional political manipulation seem primitive. This discovery has staggering implications for concepts like personal responsibility, criminal justice, and individual merit. If your choices can be systematically influenced by algorithms, to what extent are you really responsible for your actions? If your personality can be shaped by systems operating outside your consciousness, what does it mean to have merit or guilt for your successes and failures? Some people respond to these revelations with denial or minimization. They argue that there have always been external influences on human behavior, that propaganda and manipulation aren't historical novelties, that we're simply dramatizing normal technological changes. This perspective completely misses the qualitative dimension of the transformation we are experiencing. The difference between traditional manipulation and algorithmic control isn't just one of scale, but of fundamental nature. Traditional propaganda was crude, obvious, and easily identifiable. You knew when you were being persuaded. Algorithms operate with a subtlety and personalization that makes resistance extremely difficult. How do you resist something you can't even perceive? How do you maintain autonomy in relation to systems that know your vulnerabilities better than you do? Moreover, the speed and ubiquity of algorithmic influence have no historical precedent. While traditional propaganda operated at specific moments and in limited contexts, algorithms are present in every moment of your digital life, influencing hundreds of micro decisions per day. The cumulative effect of this constant influence is a gradual transformation of personality that happens so slowly you can't notice you're changing. But is there hope for resistance and recovery of individual autonomy? The answer is complex and requires both personal changes and broader systemic transformations. At the individual level, the first step is developing what we can call algorithmic literacy, the ability to recognize when you're being influenced by automated systems. This means paying attention to your own behavioral patterns and questioning the origin of your impulses and desires. When you feel like buying something, stop and ask, where did this desire come from? When you find yourself with a strong opinion about a subject, reflect, what information led to this opinion and how did it reach you? When you feel certain emotions after using digital devices, investigate what specific content provoked these reactions. The practice of metacognition, that is thinking about your own thoughts, becomes a fundamental skill of political resistance. The more aware you become of your own mental processes, the harder it becomes for external systems to manipulate those processes without you noticing. It's also crucial to establish regular moments of digital disconnection where you can experience your natural preferences and impulses without algorithmic interference. This doesn't mean simply getting off social media for a few hours, but creating substantial periods where you make decisions without consulting digital devices, where you form opinions through personal reflection or face-to-face conversations, where you experience boredom and quiet without constant stimulation. During these disconnection periods, many people discover that their desires and priorities change significantly, consumption impulses diminish, anxieties about issues that seemed urgent online reveal themselves to be artificial. Interests and curiosities that were suppressed by the bombardment of algorithmic content begin to resurface. It's as if you can finally hear your own voice after years of listening only to amplified echoes. At the collective level, we urgently need regulatory changes that limit technology companies' ability to collect personal data and manipulate behavior. This includes legislation that requires algorithmic transparency, gives users real control over what type of content they receive, and establishes clear ethical limits on what types of behavioral influence are acceptable. But perhaps more important than legal changes is a cultural transformation in how we understand technology and autonomy. We need to abandon the naive narrative that technology is neutral and that more digital connectivity automatically represents human progress. We need to develop a culture of healthy skepticism about systems that promise to give us exactly what we want, especially when we can't explain how they know what we want. We also need to revalue experiences and knowledge that cannot be digitized or algorithmized. This includes skills like deep contemplation, face-to-face conversation, manual work, silent walks, reading physical books, and other activities that require sustained attention and generate insights that cannot be easily captured in data. Resistance to algorithmic control shouldn't be understood as a Luddite rejection of technology, but as a defense of human dignity and complexity. Humans are more than the sum of their behavioral patterns. We have capacity for surprise, creativity, unexpected change, and choices that defy statistical predictions. Preserving this capacity requires constant vigilance against systems that try to reduce us to predictable datasets. Looking to the future, the question isn't whether we'll be able to completely avoid algorithmic influence. That's probably impossible in a digital society. The question is whether we'll be able to maintain an irreducible core of human autonomy that allows us to use technology without being completely used by it. This will require not just individual resistance, but the creation of social, educational, and cultural spaces that cultivate human capacities that algorithms cannot replicate or manipulate. The battle for human autonomy in the digital age will be defined in the coming decades. This isn't a fight against machines, but against social and economic systems that reduce human beings to exploitable resources. It's a struggle for the preservation of the unpredictability, complexity, and dignity that define our humanity. If these reflections have touched something you've been feeling, but perhaps haven't found words to express, know that you're not alone. By subscribing to this channel, you'll connect with a growing community of people who share your concerns and your desire for a deeper understanding of the philosophical challenges of our time. Each week, we meet here to explore together the big questions that define our era and to seek not just understanding, but also wiser ways of living amid the transformations we're witnessing. This isn't just a channel, but a space for dialogue and collective growth. Join us on this continuous journey. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about how to live with more wisdom and purpose in a world that often leaves us disoriented and divided. When you wake up tomorrow at 6:47 a.m. and your phone vibrates 3 times in succession, you'll have a fundamental choice. You can continue following the algorithmic script that was written for you, or you can pause, breathe deeply, and ask, what kind of life do I really want to live? And more importantly, who is really in control of this decision? The answer to this question may determine not only the course of your individual life, but the future of human autonomy in our digital age. Except in very extreme circumstances, it should not be censored and the person should not be punished. The problem is not with the human being who published this hate-filled post. The problem is that the Facebook algorithm or the TikTok algorithm now takes this post and deliberately shows it to millions of other people because it assumes that it will increase engagement. This is the problem.
Hello, everybody. And what I want to talk to you today about is the power to shape the world and the power to shape our future. About your power as leaders and as innovators, but also about the power of the human species as a whole. And the big question we are facing is whether AI is taking away humanity's power to control our future, or perhaps AI is giving humanity more power than ever before. And also, can we even speak about humanity, about a single humanity anymore? Or perhaps humanity in the era of AI is splitting into different groups, each with a radically different future. But before we get to AI, we have to say a few words about politics. The relatively stable liberal order of the early 21st century is collapsing. Instead of a cooperative order based on universal values, global institutions, and international laws, we are entering into a super competitive, chaotic world in which only one thing matters, and this one thing is brute force. Leaders like President Trump envision the world as a collection of fortresses, with each country separated from the others by high walls. Financial walls, like tariffs, military walls, cultural walls, and physical walls. This vision may have certain advantages, but it fails to address one key problem. Walled fortresses are seldom friendly. Thousands of years of history teach us that each national fortress would probably want a bit more security, prosperity, and territory for itself at the expense of the neighbors. And in the absence of universal values, global institutions, and international laws, how would rival fortresses resolve their disputes? For millennia, the vision of the world as a collection of fortresses always led to exactly the same outcome: a never-ending cycle of wars, with powerful empires conquering their weaker neighbors and eventually fighting each other for supremacy. This is already beginning to happen all around us. Wars of conquest, which were taboo since 1945, are coming back. Russia already sustained 1 million casualties in its attempt to conquer Ukraine and re-establish the Russian Empire. The Trump administration has already expressed imperial ambitions regarding Greenland, Panama, and even Canada, and seems to support Israel's conquest of Gaza. China, too, has its eyes on overseas expansion. The collapse of the old order is frightening, but it is also, of course, an opportunity to shape a better order. And the big question is, who will be the shapers? In the old liberal order, the ideal was that all humans would be shapers. It didn't matter whether you came from the USA or Brazil, whether you're white or black, a man or a woman, straight or gay, you had equal human dignity, and therefore, in theory at least, your views and interests counted for something. Sure, this liberal ideal was never fully realized. Ideals are not reality. But the liberal world was nevertheless a huge improvement over previous historical models. In the new post-liberal chaotic world, the ideal of equal human dignity is completely and openly abandoned. Instead of all humans trying to cooperate to shape a world that will be good for all humans, the current mantras are me first and might is right. A few powerful people in a handful of countries think that they have the right to shape the world for everyone. If you remember the meeting earlier this year between President Trump and President Zelensky at the White House, whenever Zelensky talked about things like justice or peace or territorial sovereignty of nations, President Trump interrupted him and said, "You don't have the cards. You don't have the cards." As we are meeting here in Sao Paulo to talk about the future of humanity, there are two questions for each of you to ponder. First, do you have any cards? Are there any cards in Sao Paulo? Or are all the cards in Washington, Beijing, and Moscow in the hands of people like Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin? The second question is perhaps even more important. Do you want to live in a world where the only thing that matters is cards? Is life ultimately just a card game with winners and losers? Now, I could have given the exact same speech that I gave now in 1939 or in 1914 or in countless other historical moments when humanity was on the brink of a major crisis. But this time, it's really different. Because as we ask ourselves, who will shape the new world of the 21st century, we need to take into account not only human shapers. For the first time in history, there are also non-human shapers on the planet, AIs. We might be quite close, maybe a few years, quite close to the moment when an algorithm would tell all humans, including Trump and Putin, you don't have the cards. As we enter the era of AI, I want to briefly explore here 3 questions. What is AI? What is the threat of AI? And how can all of you, business leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators, help humanity not just survive, but also flourish in the era of AI? So let's start. What is AI? There is so much hype around this term, AI, that the term is now inaccurately applied to almost every machine, and it is becoming difficult to know what it really means. So let me be very, very clear. AI does not mean automation. AI means agency. AI is not a tool in our hands. AI is an independent agent capable of acting and learning and changing on its own. To be an AI, it is not enough for a machine to act independently, automatically. It must also have the capacity to learn and change by itself, to make decisions by itself, and to invent new ideas by itself. As a simple example, consider a coffee machine. If you press a button and the machine automatically makes you an espresso according to a pre-programmed procedure, this is not AI. The machine doesn't learn or create anything new by itself. But suppose that as you approach the machine, even before you press any button, the machine says to you, I've been monitoring you for the last few weeks. Based on everything I've learned about you, and based on your facial expression right now, I predict that you would like to have a double espresso with 1 spoon of sugar. So I've already made you such a cup. Here, take it. That's an AI. It learned something by itself and decided something by itself. And it is really AI if the following day the machine announces, I've now invented a new drink that I call Bespresso, and I think you would like it even better than espresso. So here, try it out. I made you a cup. The confusion about AI results in part from the term itself. The term AI has been invented decades ago as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it is inaccurate to think about AI as an artificial intelligence if by artificial we mean something that is entirely designed and controlled by humans. AI is not artificial in this sense. So it's better perhaps to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence. Alien not in the sense that it's coming from outer space, it doesn't. Alien in the sense that this is a non-human intelligence, it's not even an organic intelligence. It operates on completely different inorganic lines. It therefore is able to make decisions and to invent ideas that would never occur to human beings or to any other organic animal. A famous example of this was given already back in 2016 when the AI AlphaGo defeated the human Go champion Lee Sedol in Seoul. This game became justly famous, not just because AlphaGo defeated the human champion. It was the way AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol which shocked the world. Because AlphaGo, in order to win, invented new strategies for how to play the game that never occurred to any human player in thousands of years of the history of Go. Now, as long as AI invents new ways to play games or new kinds of coffee, it doesn't seem very important. But very soon, AI will invent new military strategies, new kinds of money, and even entire ideologies and religions. Consider money and finance more generally. If you recall the 2007-2008 financial crisis, you might remember that it was largely caused or started by something called CDOs, collateralized debt obligations. CDOs were financial devices invented by a handful of mathematicians and investment wizards. These financial devices were so complex that they were almost unintelligible to most humans, including politicians and regulators. And this led to an oversight failure and a global catastrophe. Now, what happens if we now allow or even encourage AIs to invent new financial devices that will be orders of magnitude more complex than CDOs and that will be utterly unintelligible to any human being? Such devices could greatly improve financial efficiency and contribute to economic growth, and they could become the bedrock of the global financial system. But what would happen to human politics when no voter or politician is able to understand and regulate finance anymore? And what happens if after a few years of unprecedented boom, the financial system suddenly busts and there isn't a single human being on earth that is able to make sense of what is happening? Now consider the implications for something like religion. Especially, let's take as an example, religions based on texts like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. For thousands of years, Judaism granted ultimate authority not to human beings, but to texts like the Bible and the Talmud. Flesh and blood rabbis nevertheless had immense power within Jewish society for the simple reason that their holy texts could never speak for themselves. They were mute. Whenever you had a question about the text, you needed a human interpreter. Rabbis are humans who know their way around many Jewish texts, from the Bible to the latest commentaries on the Talmud. This is the source of their authority. Now, over the centuries, so many Jewish texts have been composed that not even the most learned rabbi is able to read all these texts in his or her lifetime, let alone remember everything written there. But of course, this is something that an AI can easily accomplish. AI could quickly read all the Jewish texts ever composed, remember every word in every single one of these texts, and also find patterns in the texts that have so far escaped human notice, human attention, and AI could therefore use its unprecedented scriptural understanding and knowledge to produce completely new interpretations of the Holy Word. And this, of course, is true of Christianity and Islam as well. In effect, AI can start functioning as a holy text that talks back to the faithful without any need of a human mediation. What happens to a religion of texts when the texts start talking? Now, since Judaism invests, as I said, authority in the texts, a flesh and blood rabbi cannot just ignore the scriptural arguments of an AI. And human rabbis will very soon find it very difficult to compete with AI's mastery of the Jewish canon. Even if AI is not granted formal rabbinical status, it is likely that at least some humans, including even some rabbis, would turn to an AI rabbi for scriptural guidance and inspiration. The result might be surprising new developments in very old religions or the emergence of entirely new religions. Now, these kinds of developments have enormous positive potential. They can help humanity in countless ways, from inventing new medicines to preventing catastrophic climate change. But, of course, AI also poses many threats. So let's move on to the second question of what is the threat of AI. The basic problem with AI is not that it is evil. The problem is that it is alien and therefore unpredictable and untrustworthy. At the heart of the AI race, there is a paradox of trust. Humans find it difficult to trust one another, especially as the world is becoming a collection of hostile fortresses. But the people who develop AI somehow manage to believe that we could trust the AIs. When I meet the people who lead the AI revolution, I normally ask them two questions. First, I ask them, why are you moving so fast when there are such huge risks? And the response almost everybody gives is the same. They say, we agree. We know that there are big dangers, and it would be best to proceed with more care. However, if we slow down while our competitors in the other company or in the other countries won't slow down, they will win the AI race, and the world will be dominated by the most ruthless people. We cannot trust our human competitors, so we must move as fast as possible. Then I ask the second question. Do you think you could trust the super intelligent AIs that you're developing? And the same people who just told me they can't trust the human competitors suddenly assure me that they could trust the super intelligent AIs. And this is such a paradox, because we have thousands of years of experience with human beings. We have a broad understanding of human psychology and biology, of the human craving for power, of the tricks humans use to gain power, and also of the forces that keep the human pursuit of power in check. We have also made considerable progress in finding ways to build trust between humans. 100,000 years ago, people lived in tiny bands of just a few dozen individuals and couldn't trust anybody outside their band. Today, there are nations like Brazil with hundreds of millions of citizens, and there are even bigger networks of cooperation linking all 8 billion humans on the planet. Complete strangers often grow the food we eat and invent and develop the medicines that keep us healthy. Of course, we are far from completely solving the problem of human trust, and there are still many tensions and conflicts and wars in the world. But with humans, at least we understand the challenge we are facing. In contrast, we have almost no experience with super intelligent AIs. We have just created the very first prototypes. We already know that even primitive AIs can lie, manipulate, and adopt goals and strategies that were not foreseen by their human developers. We have no idea what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with millions of humans, and it is even more difficult to predict what will happen when millions of super intelligent AIs interact with one another, creating AI societies, AI tribes. What kind of goals will they develop? What kind of tricks might they invent? True, at present, it is humans who develop the AIs, so we can try to design them in a way that will make them safe for humanity. But remember that a machine is an AI only if it is capable of learning and changing by itself, making decisions by itself, and inventing new ideas by itself. So no matter how human designs them originally, the AIs can then change in a radical and unpredictable manner. And it's a huge gamble to simply trust that these super intelligent alien intelligences will always remain our obedient servants. The humans who despair of trusting other humans, yet think they can trust these alien intelligences, may be making a very, very big mistake. Now, I know that it's sometimes hard for people to understand how AIs might escape human control. Due to the influence of science fiction, when we talk about AIs escaping our control, people tend to imagine a scenario of killer robots running in the streets, shooting people. While something like this is actually already happening in some places like Ukraine and like Gaza, this is nevertheless the wrong image. If you want to understand how AIs can escape our control, don't think about killer robots. Think about business corporations. What are corporations? Corporations like Microsoft or SpaceX or Petrobras are non-human agents. Though they don't have a body or a mind, these corporations can open bank accounts, can hire people, fire people, lobby politicians, and do many, many other things. Now, previously, this corporate agency was just a legal fiction, a fantasy of lawyers. Why? Because in practice, every decision made by Microsoft or Petrobras was actually made by some human being, not by the corporation. Every decision was made by some human executive, human shareholder, human engineer. But with AI, corporate decisions will increasingly be made by a non-human intelligence, a non-human agent. Imagine a corporation that has no human executives and no human shareholders, only AI executives and shareholders. This corporation can make billions and reshape the world. A practical question already today in 2025 is, do we want as a society to allow such things? This is a practical question. Do we as a society allow AIs to open bank accounts, to manage corporations, to trade and invest, to hire people, to lobby politicians? So let us move to the last question. How can humanity flourish in the era of AI? To survive and flourish, we need to remember two lessons from history. First, power isn't happiness. We humans have been extremely good in acquiring power, but so far we have not been very successful in translating power into happiness. That's why today we are thousands of times more powerful than in the Stone Age, but humans are not thousands of times more happy. That's also why the most powerful people in the world, like Trump and Musk and Xi and Putin, are definitely not the happiest people in the world. Secondly, to survive and flourish, we should remember also that intelligence isn't wisdom. Humans are the most intelligent animals on the planet, and at the same time, we are also the most deluded animals on the planet. No other animal can believe the kind of nonsense that humans can believe. For example, my home region of the Middle East is burning in a horrendous war, fueled in part by the most ridiculous fantasies you can imagine. Humans there, on all sides of the conflict, seriously believe that the creator of the universe commanded them to fight and kill other humans. And they also seriously believe that the creator of the universe will reward them for their violence with everlasting joy and bliss in heaven. No chimpanzee will ever believe such nonsense. But many highly intelligent humans believe it. So power isn't happiness, and intelligence isn't wisdom. AI will be more powerful and more intelligent than us. But the power of AI doesn't mean it will bring happiness, and the intelligence of AI doesn't mean that AI will be free from delusions. In fact, a super intelligence might very well be super deluded. Therefore, the big challenge for business leaders and innovators is not how to create more powerful and more intelligent technology. Rather, the challenge is how to develop the wisdom necessary to use all this power and intelligence for good purposes. How to do it? The answer is quite simple. Build more trust between humans before developing super intelligent AIs. Do you know why planet Earth is nevertheless ruled by humans and not by chimpanzees? Not because we are more intelligent than the chimpanzees. Humans rule the world because we know better than any other animal how to build trust with strangers and cooperate in very, very large numbers. We have developed this ability for thousands of years. Unfortunately, just when we need human trust more than ever before, many of our most powerful leaders are busy destroying this trust. Instead of strengthening connections between all humans, they are busy building walls between humans. If humanity is divided, AI will escape our control and will enslave or even annihilate us. On the other hand, if humanity cooperates, we can together develop AI and other technologies in a safe and responsible way. Think about AI as humanity's common child. When we educate children, we know that children learn from what we do, not from what we say. If you tell your child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying, the child will also lie. Similarly, if you're a tech tycoon developing a super intelligent AI, and you're telling the AI, don't lie, and the AI then observes you lying, the AI will also lie. And if you tell the AI, be compassionate to people, but the AI observes you engaged in a ruthless pursuit of power, the AI will also grow up to pursue power ruthlessly without any compassion. This is why we must first solve the problem of human trust and only then develop super intelligent AI. If AI is developed in a cooperative way by compassionate and trustworthy humans, then the AI too is much more likely to grow up to be cooperative, compassionate, and trustworthy. And all of you have a role to play in that. You are leaders and innovators. Amidst the growing political chaos in the world, the business leaders and the tech innovators still have very considerable power to shape the world. So use your power to build trust between humans. Use your power to build a world which isn't just a card game between ruthless warlords. Build a world in which the dignity of everybody still counts. Thank you.